Countdown to Halloween 2023, featuring eerie and uncanny tales of haunts, ghosts, and suspense. October is finally here. Join us all month for special Halloween presentations on Storylink Radio's YouTube channel as we count down to Halloween 2023. Keep a close eye on YouTube alerts or you'll miss one. Celebrate October with us right here and now. Tonight's presentation from Storylink Radio. The Box. Ready or not, here I come. Tad uncovered his eyes and looked around. In one direction, he could see a carpet of short, spiky sawgrass that seemed to roll on for miles. Sunlight glinted off the standing water in which the grass grew. On another side, tall, spindly cypress trees rose from the soggy, wet flatlands, dotted with shallow pools. Tad was standing in the cool shade of a thick stand of pine and live oak. At first glance, he seemed to be alone, but he knew they were all there. His two little sisters would be the easiest to find. They never went very far into the swamp, but they always giggled. He saw a flash of red off to his left. He turned in that direction, treading cautiously. His dad had told him that's how Indians moved. The only Indians Tad ever saw were those selling souvenirs at the Tamiami Trail. But he loved Indian lore, and he read everything he could about the people who first lived in the swamp. His father knew lots of Indians. He worked for the Central and Southern Florida Flood Control District, and he probably knew more things about this land than anybody. A twig snapped a few feet away. Tad eased up to a half-rotten, moss-covered log and leaned over it. Two small girls were crouching behind, heads close together, hands over their mouths, stifling their own laughter. "I see you," he whooped. The girls squealed and ran off in the direction of the home base. It was no contest. He tagged them easily and declared them slaves. They would have to wait there while he searched for Dave and Scooch. Tad headed out into the swamp. There were probably a few snakes around, maybe even a gator or two, but it was pretty safe and easy to get around since much of the swamp had dried up. In the fall, the ground he was walking on would be knee-deep in mucky water. Because of the danger, he wasn't allowed to play out there then. An old legend claimed that the strange spirits lived in this part of the swamp. Tad had seen pictures of ancient rock carvings and paintings from the area that showed scenes of odd, green-eyed, long-faced creatures falling to earth from the stars. Tad's mom said there were enough hazards out there without worrying about ghostly aliens. A rustling noise caught Tad's attention. He stood perfectly still. The sound was coming from a pile of brown leaves fanned around the base of a palmetto tree. Slowly he crouched down to pick up a small stone. Aiming it carefully, he threw it. A few dried leaves crackled like tissue paper. A long, mustard-colored lizard broke cover. Tad pounced, grabbing it behind its neck. The little creature squirmed in his hands. That was when he heard Dave calling his name. He'd forgotten all about the game. He gently released his captive and watched it scurry to safety. "I'm over here," Tad yelled, cupping his hands over his mouth. A moment later, two boys tumbled into the clearing. They were panting hard. Both tried to speak at once. Dave finally forced the words out between his gasps. "We found something out there. You gotta come see." Scooch just nodded and he tried to untangle his shoelaces. Tad figured this must be really important. "What is it? A body? Indians?" Better," Dave whispered. He leaned in and said, "It's a secret passage." "Oh, come on. Are you guys kidding? Way out here?" "I swear." Dave raised his left hand. He wasn't too bright, and he would have to stay back in the 5th grade at Clewiston Elementary this fall. But when he vowed something was true, nobody questioned it. "Okay," Tad grinned. "Let's go." The sun was directly overhead when the trio reached a wide hammock covered with cypress and scrub pine. Even in the brightness of day, dark shadows huddled under the trees, shadows from which unseen eyes could track the boys' progress deeper into the swamp. Scooch pointed out some puma tracks leading off into the dense undergrowth. None of them had ever actually seen a wild puma before, but at night, safe in their beds, they'd all heard the snarls of the hunting cats. Before long, they came across the remains of an unlucky armadillo. "I don't like this place. I think we're out too far," Scooch murmured, eyeing the body and looking around. "Maybe we should forget it." "Nah, don't worry. That cat's long gone." Tad tossed a clod of dirt at the armadillo. A cloud of flies arose, then settled again. Come on, it's over here," Dave said as they skirted the carcass. He led the way up a wide mound. It was only a few feet higher than the surrounding area, but that would be enough to keep the patch of land above the water level when the rains came. Tad poked around in the thatch with his foot. "There's nothing up here." Yeah. Suddenly he felt himself falling. His leg slipped through the tangle up to his thigh. There was nothing but open space under his foot. He scooted back to solid ground. "Wow, what is that?" Proudly, Dave pulled at the matted vines. I did the same thing. That's how we found it. Look. A large clump ripped free. Tad stretched out in his belly and gazed down into the black, gaping hole. The cold, damp air stung his nostrils. Something was down there, something very old. You want to go down? Dave poked at him. I have my pen light. We don't know what's down there, Dave. Besides, there's no way to get down. Tad desperately wanted to investigate the opening, but he knew the swamp held many surprises, and exploration could be dangerous unless they were properly prepared. Uh-huh. See, there's some kind of stairs over there. Dave shined his light on the crude stone steps descending into the blackness. Well, what about the girls? I left them alone, and they don't know where we are, Tad said feebly. He knew he was cornered. Oh, they'll be okay. They'll get bored waiting and probably go home. Well, all right. But leave Scooch up here to stand guard in case we need help. Against his better judgment, Tad agreed. Dave nodded and Scooch sighed with relief. The two boys lowered themselves into the opening. Dave went first with the flashlight. It was difficult to keep their footing on the damp, slimy steps. Hey, Scooch, Dave yelled up. Try pulling away some more vines. Dried leaves, grass, and small twigs showered down on them as the boys tugged at the thatch above their heads. With a crackling sound, a large knot of it gave way and the sunlight streamed into the pit. Their surroundings took shape around them. The passage was about 6 feet across, and the steps, which were carved directly from the stone, curved about 15 feet toward a small opening in the opposite wall. Whatever this place was, it had been here for hundreds of years, and the swamp seemed to be trying to reclaim it. The walls were green with mold, and moisture was seeping in on all sides. I wonder why this doesn't dry up like everything else, Dave whispered. It's probably below the waterline. Limestone's real porous. Dave furrowed his brow at Tad. How do you know that? Oh, my dad told me. Sometimes he takes out on field trips, as he calls them. We do experiments and stuff. This whole place is nothing but sand, mud, and limestone. Finally, they stood before the opening at the base of the steps. Dave shined the flashlight inside the passageway, but it didn't do much good. Are you with me? Tad tried to keep his voice steady, but he had an uncomfortable feeling. He wanted to turn and get away from that place as quickly as possible, but his curiosity was stronger. Sure, let's go. They ducked around the arch and found themselves in a small, shallow cave that at first appeared empty. Be careful, Tad cautioned. There might be water moccasins. Dave nodded and moved on, his sneakers making squishing noises in the foul-smelling slime. He swept the light in a back-and-forth motion across the floor. Tad, look at that! A few feet away, a massive rectangle of stone rose out of the reeking muck. It was very wide, nearly shoulder height, and about 7 feet long. It appeared to be topped with an immense slab of solid rock. The sides were deeply carved with intricate figures and designs, some familiar, most not. This is an ancient Indian place or something, Tad murmured. It looks like an altar. You mean for sacrifices? Or a tomb, I don't know. Look, Dave pointed his tiny light at a wide depression in the rock. Nestled in it was a smooth grayish box about the size of a shoebox. It was wreathed with shells and stones. What is it? Tad tiptoed closer. Well, I don't know. It looks like it's made of some kind of metal. It sure isn't something the Indians made. But those are strings of rutu shells around it. The Seminoles thought they were magic and used them to trap their enemies in one place. You mean the Indians trapped something in that box? Like an animal or something? Dave backed up a step or two. How did they know it wouldn't get out? Well, the legend goes that the shells contain the spirits of dead ancestors. The spirits are responsible for keeping the enemy in place, but they can do that only as long as the string of shells are unbroken. Whoever put this here sure used a lot of them. He cast a sidelong glance at his friend. They must have been terribly afraid of whatever was in that box. They used some powerful medicine to keep it in there. Let's take it, Dave breathed. Tad could feel his body shaking. He wanted to do just as Dave suggested, but somewhere deep down inside, some primeval fear gnawed at him. No, we really shouldn't move it. Come on, you don't really believe in all that magic junk? Even though he was too afraid to pick up the box himself, he looked at Tad and said slyly, I bet your dad would be real proud of you for finding this. It was true. Tad knew this was the sort of thing his father had been searching for on all those field trips. Dave pushed him forward. Go on, take it. Trembling with fear and anticipation, Tad reached out and gripped the box. But then when he tried to lift it, it seemed glued to the spot. Closing his eyes, he tugged harder. Abruptly, the rotted strings that held the rutu shells in place gave way, and he stumbled backward. Something unseen brushed against his foot, then slithered away in the ooze. A bone-chilling wind swirled through the caves. Suddenly, as if it seemed 1,000 voices were whispering a single warning, a warning that Tad sensed rather than heard. Oh, Don't free them, no! Don't free them. As impossible as it seemed, it felt as if hundreds of phantom hands were tugging at his fingers and grasping helplessly at the box. In the darkness, he saw the container was beginning to glow. It felt slightly warm in his hands. In terror, Tad lurched forward to return the frightening object to its resting place. But he knew it was too late. The ancient magic that had confined it had been undone. The Rutu shells crumbled into dust, and the huge stone slab began to slide away, revealing that the massive stone beneath was hollow. Inside there were what appeared to be two large coffin-like cylinders. They were made of some strange glassy material and filled with swirling, unearthly greenish gas. Rooted to the spot, the boys watched with dread as a seam along each cylinder popped open and the tops raised slowly in a cloud of medicinal-smelling gas. The penlight slipped from Dave's grasp and sank in the muddy puddle on the floor. Still an eerie glow from the now open stone illuminated the cave as slowly, ponderously, a silver-suited figure rose from each cylinder. Raising what looked like bizarre laser weapons, the beings turned to look directly at the boys. They had long faces and large emerald-green cat-like eyes. One of the creatures lifted its hand toward Tad and bared its sharp, ragged teeth in some sort of grin. Although it didn't actually speak, Tad understood it. "The box," it seemed to order. "Give me the box." As if waking from a trance, Tad turned and careened, slipping and sliding up the steps out of the hole and back into the sunshine with Dave at his heels. Scooch was at his side, babbling. "What you guys see down there? What'd you find? What is it?" "Run! Get out of here! Run!" Tad screamed. "They're right behind us." Dave was about halfway out of the pit when a green flash of light crackled up from below and enveloped him. For one moment he looked down at himself with a surprised expression, then at his friends. The next moment there was a sizzling sound, and Dave was gone. The smell of burnt bacon filled the air. The beings appeared at the opening and leveled their weapons at the two remaining boys. "Let's go!" Tad yelled. Dropping the box, he sprinted farther into the swamp. A bolt of green light hit the ground to his right. A large patch of vegetation glittered and then disappeared. Behind him, he heard Scooch shriek, followed by that hideous sizzling sound. Staggering, he regained his balance and raced deeper into the swamp. Tad didn't think about the snakes or the gators or the approaching night. He pushed everything from his mind with the thought of escape. He didn't even realize that he was no longer being followed. At the opening of their former tomb, one of the creatures knelt, carefully lifted the metal box, and opened it. Inside was a maze of tiny wires and a keyboard covered with peculiar symbols. As he held it, the light began to speed along the tubes. A low humming sound vibrated the box. He fingered a few keys and motioned to his comrade, who was watching Tad disappear in the endless sweep of sawgrass. "Let him go. I've sent our position. It won't do him any good to run. Besides, we should be grateful. Because of his primitive curiosity, we have finally gained our freedom. We underestimated the Earthlings last time and allowed ourselves to be captured while we were in our energy pods. This time we will take no chances." Beyond the orbit of Pluto, the sleek star cruiser was nearing its destination when they first picked up the signal. "Captain, we're picking up extreme emergency signals from Solar G3 in this system." Captain blinked his large emerald green cat-like eyes. "Do we have a team there?" "Yes, sir. They were stationed 700 planetary years past." "That's a world of very primitive civilizations. Our team should have taken over by now. Something must have gone very wrong. Arm all our support crafts, seal the quadrant, set hyperlight speed. We're going in with full force." Far away, Tad collapsed, exhausted, across an outcrop of rock. He rubbed his scraped knees. It seemed as if he had been running for hours. In the distance, he heard the growl of a hunting puma. "It'll be okay. It'll be okay," he tried to convince himself. "I'll circle back tomorrow and warn my dad. He'll know what to do." There was nowhere he could go until morning, so Tad rolled onto his back and took comfort in watching the stars. He fell asleep without noticing the dozens of points of light in the night sky. The dozens of points of light that seemed to be growing larger and larger and coming closer and closer. You've just heard tonight's story from Storylink Radio's Countdown to Halloween 2023. Remember to come back for our next tale. Many more stories of all genres available to listen to and read along with now on our website at www.storylinkradio.com. Visit our YouTube channel at youtube.com/storylinkradio. And visit our podcast for easy mobile listening anywhere, anytime. Just search for Storylink Radio on your favorite podcast provider. Oh, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button and click that alert bell for Storylink Radio.